Hello and welcome to Femme Fatale by Helen. I have a very amazing dear friend and guest here today. Her name is Jennifer Lahoda. I met this amazing woman at the YPO Beverly Hills chapter, and she's on the board member at the chapter, and I have a pleasure of interviewing her, and I cannot wait, and hopefully I'm gonna have a couple of different interviews with you. So I am very inspired by this woman, by her bravery, by her how intelligent she is, and by her amazingly good heart. And I was like, a woman like that, I want to interview her and I want to be able to send her message out. She's beautiful inside out. She's an entrepreneur. She is kind, go-getter, hustler, and she sees the world in a very beautiful view. And I'm going to have her today, and I'm going to have this chit chat and this basically interview with her today. Thank you so much, Jen, for coming and giving your time to me. And this means so much to me. I am, from the first day that I have met you, I was like, wow, woman like that exists. So I want you to please introduce yourself. Elizabeth, talk about yourself. Then I'm going to bombard you with my questions.
I love it. Well, Helen, I just want to say that the feeling of adoration is mutual to you, and that is such a beautiful introduction. So thank you. As Helen said, my name is Jennifer Lahoda. I am currently the president of Pacific Resource Recovery, which is a hazardous waste facility in Los Angeles, California. And we convert flammable hazardous waste into supplemental fuel. And the cool part about what I do is that I'm third generation to do it. So my grandfather and my mother started the business together. My mother was pregnant with me when the business started, and she started working for the business. And I took over the day-to-day 40 years later.
Wow. You know, I know you were the third generation and you became a CEO, but you also came from a mom that she was a female in a time that it was not so many females, female business-owned operations. And I met your mom, and I also was fascinated by her. I was like, for sure it's in their blood. And then I just realized how much you and your mom are alike, and how you guys, the way that you guys think and operate, very, very similar. So I want to also talk about your mom, because you came from an amazing family. You're super amazing. I want you to talk about how amazing it was even to have a mom that it was so exceptionally brave.
Well, I love that you asked that question. And while you were talking, it made me think of this story. So when I was, maybe 9 or 10, I remember sitting home, I was homesick for something. And I would sneak watch Sally Jessy Raphael, which was a daytime talk show. And at the end, they would always be like, do you have any topics for Sally? And I would always secretly dream about calling the Sally Jessy Raphael show. I'm so dating myself now, by the way. And telling her about my mom, because my mom and my father divorced when I was very young. And then she remarried when I was pretty young. But the way that my family always was, I always like to joke that I don't have a family tree, I have a family forest.
Oh, wow.
Because my mom was the boss of my dad and my stepdad.
I see.
And so I grew up, even though her and her first husband, my father, divorced, they had this beautiful relationship until he died, and he worked for her, and they were, they were really, wonderful friends and business colleagues. And then my stepfather also came into the business. And so I grew up in this environment, not only being raised kind of in a family business, but the business was paint manufacturing for automotive and industrial applications.
Wow.
And then my grandfather and my mother came up with the recycling business of converting the hazardous waste. He came up with it in the late 70s. That's when she first started. And then she started running the business in the mid 80s. And so it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I think as a kid, I kind of thought it was normal that people's moms were in charge of things. Especially when I was really young, right? That it was I felt like it was I thought everybody kind of had a family business, and that's what people did. Right? It wasn't until maybe I got...
So that was the reality for you, to be raised by a mom that is exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally like leading lots of people, and
Yes.
working in an industry that is dominated by men almost only.
Yes.
You know, and she was so strong and powerful to be able to have a handle of the entire operation.
Totally. And also, like, sew my little Bo Peep costume for Halloween and make sure that, like, you know, my birthday party stuff was in my classroom and that kind of thing.
Wow.
The other thing that I saw was, you know, how my stepfather also, right, you know, like, he sometimes was the only dad that would be at the school thing. Right? And he loved that. And I had a wonderful relationship with him in that.
That's very important.
And I was also just enormously blessed. And I didn't realize this, I think, as much until I became an adult, you know, who was in relationships and then, you know, got married. And I'm married to my husband. I have 2 beautiful children, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yes.
But I had 4 parents at everything. So my mom, my stepdad, my dad, and my stepmom.
Oh my God, amazing. So you kept your relationship with both sides.
Yes. And well, what was really beautiful, what I see in hindsight, is because they're like in their 30s, right, when this is all happening.
Yes. Very young.
You know, they made the commitment really to my brother and I, right, to really make sure that this whole process made us feel more loved and not like we were at odds of choosing, you know, a mom or a dad or sides.
I see.
And I'm not saying that it was all just like rainbows and, you know, I have some therapy. Let's be real. We can talk about that later too. But like, you know, in hindsight, I just really think about how blessed I am that the amount of possibility that was kind of shown to me as a kid.
I see.
And my mother's kind of way in the world, I call it like a quiet strength. She's a very graceful human.
Yes.
Incredibly warm, so smart, but very relatable.
Very correct.
She received kind of the paint industry's Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
It was supposed to be given to her in 2020, but it got put off for 2 years because of COVID.
Yes.
And I flew into Indianapolis. The whole thing was a surprise. She didn't know she was getting the award. So I had to orchestrate for her to like get to this place without her knowing.
Wow.
And then I flew in to surprise her, which was really beautiful. And we've since sold the paint manufacturing company. So it's been a while since she's been in the industry stuff.
Nice.
But I was sitting at a dinner, and one of her colleagues told me this story, which is just like peak Sandy Berg. So it's the mid-'80s, and she was the first female on the American Coatings Association board, which is like the industry's association.
Yes.
And, you know, in the mid-'80s, they had not had a woman on the board.
Correct.
And most of the people on the board are like the president of like Sherwin-Williams and Bayer and Valspar. These like huge, giant companies.
Yes.
And she's president of this, you know, small family-owned company in Los Angeles. And so she's on the board, and this guy recounts this story that, like, the president of the board at the time was this older gentleman, and he was trying to get the people around the table to volunteer for something. And he launched into this, I need a few good men, right, from... I'm going to forget which movie it was, but, like, I need a few good men. He's going on and on and on, like, I need men to rise to the occasion. And he kept saying men, men, men. And the guys slowly, this gentleman telling me this story, says they start kind of looking at each other and like fidgeting because they're like, there's like a woman at the table. It's the 80s. And people are like really sensitive to kind of these types of things, right? So finally someone looks at him and is like, I don't know, you know, Bob, there's a woman at the table. And he said that my mom was writing her notes. She looked up and said, oh, actually, I've already volunteered. So if y'all could just get it together and like we could move on. So she was basically like, he does need a few good men because the woman at the table already volunteered.
Wow.
And like, but she had this kind of like grace about her.
Yes.
That she didn't need to say like, thanks for acknowledging my presence. Instead, she was like, no, Bob's right. He needs a few good men.
You know what? You just gave me goosebumps. You know, I only met your mom once, but her presence is just... there is no way that you can miss her. And like as soon as I saw her, no one needed to tell me that's your mom. She was powerful. She was like someone that you're like, that woman is a president. Like She was a powerful that you will like notice her presence there, like the way that she carries herself and the way that she talks and the way that, like, just like what you said, she's very relatable and she's so caring. It was just, I was like, that must be her mom. Like, and of course it was.
It is, it's really an incredible honor to not only be able to have such a good relationship with my mom, right, from mother-daughter, but then to have the opportunity to, work for her.
Correct.
And in a role that she held before me.
Yes.
At a time in which we're growing the company bigger than it has ever been. And to have her support in that, but also her trust to let me make the next chapter mine.
Correct. You had a good role model, but I want to redirect this communication. You use this point. I know you had a very, very amazing role model in your life, which strong mom, powerful leader. But we have so many parents like that, and the kids, they don't turn out to be like you.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. So and I can only speak to my experience, right? And I feel pretty strongly that we're all on our own path.
Correct.
Right? And so different people are born into different situations and they have different role models. Some people excel in like the most horrifying of circumstances. Some people, have just, a pretty simple situation and they still excel. So I think it really depends on the person.
Correct. I want to see what made you, what also made you a leader, what also, because exactly everyone can look at all this experience and says, no, I want to do this or I want to do that. You also looked at it and you chose to be a leader because you chose to be a soldier, a leader who can take a project to the next level. So it was also not just having a mom like that, you choosing your self-talk with you that this is a path that I'm taking. I want to know, how did you accomplish that?
So I'll start a little bit by kind of going back to the environment that I grew up in. For me, being raised around successful people, it really set me up to have a very high expectation of myself. So I spent most of my life hearing, you're an extraordinary, little girl. When you grow up, you can be anything you want to be. You have so much potential. And for me, I almost had this fear of making the wrong choice.
I see.
Because I was afraid of not meeting this potential that all these people around me were constantly telling me, right? I was the 10-year-old at the adult table. Okay? I wasn't sitting at the kid table. I was at the adult table having listening to as much wisdom as I could and soaking it in. I was a very precocious child.
Got it.
But when I got out of high school, in high school I really, and this could be a whole nother conversation, but in high school I had a pretty severe eating disorder. And I struggled with depression and mental health issues. And the way that played out, I had a huge fear of disappointing the people around me. Oh, wow. And so my transition from high school into college. So my transition from high school into college was not kind of that typical, I graduated valedictorian and then I went to all these, the best of the schools that I was accepted into. I really, struggled with that transition because of that experience that I went through my junior and senior year. And I ended up going to kind of a smaller school. I was a little uncertain about what my major should be. It was about that time that kind of the dialogue, at least in the US, was very much find your passion, you want to find a job that is your passion. And so I had such a hard time imagining, how am I going to check all these boxes and hit these kind of successful notes?
I see.
Right? And
so you also were expecting so much from yourself.
I had a very high expectation of myself.
Okay.
Yes.
And then how did that translate to eating disorder?
Well, it's interesting because that really started for me at like 12, 13. And it was really that I think that I was trying to control the things kind of in my life.
I see.
There was, struggles at home.
Very nice.
There was, and I think that also during that time, there wasn't as much open dialogue about these kinds of things.
Got it.
And so it wasn't like those struggles were really open. I think my mom was trying really hard to kind of keep a certain facade of, everything's fine kind of for my brother and I.
Correct.
and those types of things, right? And then I think I've always been a person that has had a heart for other people and kind of seen other people's issues. And so, I had friends that were really struggling with different things, and I would compare myself a lot.
Okay.
I would compare, like, my upbringing is so great. I've got all these, my parents love me.
This is what I was just going to ask you.
Yes.
Do you think because you had such a perfect mom and you want to be a perfect, of course, one of the tools in order to be perfect is to control everything and control all the outcome. And then you were like, okay, I'm going to control how I eat or like how I look at the food.
Yeah, I would say it's probably, like, I don't know that I was consciously doing that.
Okay.
And I think that, my mom did the best that she could with the tools that she had, right?
Got it.
And especially being like who she was at the time that she was at, the amount of pressure and, kind of weight that she carried was also a lot.
Got it.
I think she remarried very quickly because in the 80s to be a single mom of 2 kids and trying to build a career,
I see.
There was a lot there. And her and my stepfather divorced when I was 20. And so, that I think that was the beginning of kind of the brewing of all of those things.
Got it.
And, I believe that relationships come into our life for, a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Oh, definitely.
And all these people, right, came in and out of, and
yes.
I still have individual relationships. I mean, my biological father's passed away, but I have, still have relationships with all these people in my life, I'm grateful for all those,
of course.
All that presence.
Of course.
And I'm grateful now that, my mom has been able to kind of do some of her own personal work to work through some of that. So,
of course.
In high school, I went through that. I think it was definitely a control issue. I also think, too, that, and the tide, I think, is changing a little bit now, but we, in the U.S. at least, we didn't equip kids to talk about feelings or understand that there's these like generational traumas that get handed down, and that we're not only holding kind of the weight of our own experience, but what comes from our family.
Even as of right now, as an adult, talking about it so comfortably and accepting it and being okay with it and say, this is what happened, and I'm like so grateful, and I love all this stuff that happened. It made me a better person. We still want to show that everything was so perfect, that creating this unreal wall for ourselves, like we are even, I feel like a distance between who we were and who we are now, and not being in contact or in touch with who we really are inside. So it's like I really admire you to be discomfortable. And I remember you, like you shared this from the first day that we had conversation together, so comfortably, so powerful. Like, this happened, I make peace with it. If this happened, it's like actually a very powerful tool that you have. You're confident about it.
Well, the nitty gritty of it is that, right at 17, I made a conscious decision that the world would be better, at 17, I have it in a journal, actually. Like, I wrote the journal from the night that I took sleeping pills.
Oh, wow.
And I truly believed that my family, my friends, that people would have an easier time grieving my death than feeling disappointed in me if they found out that I had this eating disorder and that I'd been hiding all of this stuff.
Oh, wow.
And that's heavy.
That is heavy.
And that's something that I really had to wrestle with. And
that is very heavy.
And just because I went through that, and my time was obviously not done in that, and a certain, it ended up being that was not a successful suicide attempt.
Disappointment from not being perfect.
Yeah. And in hindsight, like as an adult, I think about it now and I just want to hug that 17-year-old, right? And I just want to be like, oh, honey, it's,
Yeah.
But it was just this kind of like unspoken weight that I really took on myself,
Got
right?
it. Yes.
And it wasn't like anyone was saying you've got to be this or that.
Yes,
or
yes,
anything
yes,
else,
yes.
But I just really felt this enormous pressure.
Oh, absolutely. I get it. No one told you that. It was
Yeah.
a pressure that you're feeling at school, society, surrounding.
Totally. And then it didn't just go away. So I went into an inpatient treatment center, and that caused me to I had to really rush kind of my high school graduation, and then once I got into college, it almost was like I was trying to prove that I'm still smart and I can do this stuff and move this stuff forward. But really through my 20s, it manifested in drinking more than I should. It manifested in, spending money more than I should. And so just because the form shifted,
I see.
until we look at really deal with the root of the problem.
See. Wow.
Right?
Powerful.
And so that I think, and it's interesting because now I'll be 44 next week.
Wow.
Which I'm not afraid to say. I'm grateful for my, those 44 years of life.
Oh my God.
These are things that I feel like I'm constantly peeling. I look at it as that, for a long time I used to say, if I find myself in a cycle again, where it's like, ugh, how am I dealing with this again, right? I've gotten myself in this situation all over again.
I see.
And feel a lot of shame around that, and I couldn't talk about it because it's once again I find myself in this place, I haven't learned my lesson or whatever that is.
Yes.
I now look at it as an onion, and that different times in our lives we're allowed to heal the next layer.
Powerful.
So when something circles back to me and I start to think, Jennifer, I can't believe that we've done this before, why are we doing this again? I try to stop myself and just ask, what additionally needs to be healed around this? Not that I didn't get it.
Very amazing technique. I love that. Okay.
Right? And just the remembering that some of the stuff that we're
trying to break the basically the what does it call it?
The cycle?
The cycle or the pattern.
Yes.
There is a pattern in our brain that which we need to create a new pathway in order to get rid of the old pathway. And sometimes it comes with so many live and so many another type of painful experiences to completely be being done with the previous one and enter a new lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I think that we, if we think about kind of the lineages that we come from, that some things are our active stuff, but some of it, it's where did these thought processes come from?
I see.
Right? And it's modeled by our mothers and their mothers and their mothers.
Correct.
I think of it as a relay race with a baton, and you're going to pass issues on no matter what. So then I think, when I think of my boys, how much can I whittle that baton down, right? In this lifetime before I hand it off, right? Yes. And that's what I think of is, it's easy, like you said, to look at my accomplishments on paper, I can write a bio that makes me sound real good, right?
Okay.
But the reality is that it wasn't a straight line for me. I swore I would never be in my family's business.
Oh, wow.
I never, under any circumstances, was going to be in my family's business.
Wow.
And here I am at this point in my life, and I realize that this is the vehicle that is how I'm achieving what I think kind of my purpose is here.
Got it. So tell me this. Tell me, to your 17 years old Jennifer, what will be the best advice that you can give her? What will be the best advice to your own young version self?
Such a good question. I think that I would tell 17-year-old me that I've already lived up to my potential just by being here.
That was so beautiful.
That I don't have to prove, that she doesn't have to prove anything. That her life and her path is going to unfold in the way that it does. There's going to be ups and downs. But that the potential that people saw in 17-year-old Jen or 13-year-old Jen or 10-year-old Jen was the light that I was. And that had nothing to do with what I was going to become. It was who I was. And that's what I would want to say to anybody right now that just feels this enormous pressure is like you are living into the fullest expression of who you are right in this moment. And that's enough.
Oh my God, Jennifer, you said it so beautifully. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You know, that like...
I feel that 17-year-old Jennifer is feeling that in her heart right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel we have to, as we go through new things, new transitions and fears come up.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we stop ourselves,
mm-hmm.
right? And I think that there are things that we hold on to,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, what did 17-year-old Jennifer need that she didn't need? And there's also that same thing at maybe 15, maybe at 10, maybe at 5. Right? It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just have to pause and remind, just to say, you know, I've got this.
Yeah.
We're safe. We've done this work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I really appreciate that question because I've never answered it in that way.
Oh.
And so I really appreciate the opportunity to just say that out loud in this context.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and
Of
allow us to feel how you felt and allow people, whoever are listening to this, to be able to connect with your message. And maybe a 16, 17 years old need to hear this and empower herself with her life, with her career that she wants to choose and who she wants to choose to be in future.